Welcome to Dance Mogul magazine, and my name is Basil Harris, and I'm here with the legendary Tyrone Proctor. Welcome, Tyrone.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Sure.
Glad to be here. Glad to do this.
The pleasure is ours. You know that we're working on a dance magazine, and we're also interested in collecting historical data from people that were there at the beginning of the dance culture. And your name came up as one of the persons that was there in the beginning, and we're asking if you could share your history with us and share your story and what dance has meant to you.
Okay, well, I'll try to give you as much as I can. I guess one of the best things for me to do is to start from the beginning. Okay. I was born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My aunt and my mother, we always had a tight-knit family. My grandmother made sure of that. So basically every weekend, my aunts would go with my mother and visit them, and then my cousins would come over. I would be one of the youngest of them. This is like maybe in the late 50s, early 60s, like when Motown was beginning to be. Nina Simone, Nancy Wilson was big. James Brown had just did the song that he uses a cape with. What's the song?
Funky.
This is a man's world.
Okay.
All this other stuff. So all this stuff was going on. So my aunt went and bought a house in a place in an area called West Oak Lane, and we would always go over her house. So it had a really nice basement. So when my aunts came over there, my cousins, who were a little bit older than I, all of us would have to go down to the basement, because if you go up in the dining room, that would be for the adults.
Okay.
That's when they would be doing all of their conversations. Again, this is in the middle of the late 50s, early 60s. I'd say like 63, 64, somewhere around in there. So I was a little person that got on, a little boy that got on people's nerves. So they all threw me down there with my cousins, and my cousins were down there trying to make up steps with the cha-cha, doing the Philly dog, all of this other stuff. And I'm down there all in the way. They're telling me to sit down, and I'm running all over the place, just acting a complete fool. Mm-hmm. So that's where I start to begin to understand what dance was and how to go through dance, and through that, my aunt would always buy records, and we would listen to records as well. So by the time I got into junior high school was an opening for me. That was I went to Wagner Junior High School in Philadelphia. All right, Wagner. Got there, and they had a talent show, and I'll never forget this. They did. I sung a song, but I think I actually moved better than I did singing.
Okay.
The song was called Dion. What was his name? Dion. Oh no, I forgot. But I know the song is like, love makes the world go round, and love, baby, makes the seas all go up and down. But I got more applause out of what I was doing than opposed to the way I was singing. So I kind of steered more towards dancing. At that very same time, I was in West Oak Lane. My mother and them had moved They moved at the house right next door to where my aunt was. So we lived right next door to each other. So at that time, once we moved in there, then I would always go to this hop they would have in Broad and Alney, which was like the main feeder in close to my area, in my area in West Oak Lane. And it was called Wagner's Ballroom, not to be confused with Wagner Junior High School. It's a different thing. And that was funny because, again, it was like in the 60s. And my sister's always I've always been pro-black. We would always go to, how can I say this? Wagner's Ballroom would have two hops. What I mean by hops, there would be dance hops. The first hop would be a Jerry Blavat hop, which would be in the early afternoons. And then you also have to remember that West Oak Lane was kind of like half and half. There were a lot of white people there, but black people had started to move in. And as black people started to move in, white people started to move out. So when I went to Wagner's, there was a sufficient amount of young white people, and they would always come in the early afternoons at the Jerry Blabbett dance hop. And this is a man that the DJ goes down in history as one of the best DJs in the world that I know of. Georgie Woods, the man with the goods, he would come in later with his hop and do his. Maybe I think there would be around 4 or 5 that he would do that, and we would go on until about 9 or 10. And I would be there every day. My mother would say, "My God, you go there so much, you should own the place." So I went in there and I found up my craft. Boom, boom, boom. Then at the very same time when I got into high school was a different matter. I was fortunate and lucky enough that when I got out of high school, I was voted best dancer in the school.
So hold on. So just from going to the hops, you took an interest in music and dance, and then you found out that you had a passion for dance from going to the hops, and then you.
No, I got the passion from dance from being in the talent show in junior high school.
Okay.
With I can't think of Dion Silvers, was it? I don't know, but I know the song was "Love Makes the World Go Round." You can look it up on YouTube. It's there. That's where I got actually the passion was instilled in me with my cousins, because that's where I actually learned how to do the rap. That's where I learned how to actually do the cha-cha, the bop. I could do all of that, the Philly, but I could do all. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was doing it. Because I was just following right behind my cousins who were older. And then when I got into junior high school, then that's when it started to take shape. That I could sing, but I think I danced a little better than what I did when I was singing. And so that's what propelled me to start going to the hops in Broad Olney at Wagner's Ballroom. Okay. And at Wagner's Ballroom, it opened up a whole nother venture for me. I think I went to Wagner's Ballroom until I was at least in 10th grade or 11th grade. And even when I got into high school, as I said, when I got into high school, I think I was the first one to start an Afro-American dance group, and I went to Olney High School, all right, Olney 71, just had a 40th anniversary.
Wow.
So, and just so everybody, just want to know, just to say hi to everybody. I went and I did that, and once I did that, when I got into about 11th grade, because I hadn't been around, I hadn't been in other cities, the only city that I knew anything about was either southern Jersey and Philadelphia, and that's all that I've been in. And in Philadelphia, in the late 60s, early 70s, they would have this thing where they would have, I don't know if it came from gangs, but I think it had something to do with that. Groups of people would group themselves up, and they would get into sororities or fraternities.
Yes.
And this would be all over the city. And we would have what's called socials. And I was in this fraternity called Phi Sigma Phi with my brother and his friends and all of these other and so on. And what we would do is we would have socials in our house, the blue light parties down in the basement, and we would go, and sometimes they would have like a big event, like what do they call them things in Philly, where you go and you bring the what is it? And you bring the
karaoke?
No. You bring you bring your own bottle.
Oh, okay.
It would be that kind of thing when they would have, like, those would be the big events. And then I got out of that group when my brother got married, and I was fortunate enough to get into a group called Original Club Dante, which was probably, they had the best looking and the best dancing guys in the city in this one thing. So I fortunate and lucky enough to get in there.
What kind of dancing? Excuse me, freestyle dancing. What were you doing? Or the dance
They
of
could all
that time?
they could all dance. We would dance couples. We'd have like small little routines, but everybody in there could dance. Everybody could do what they knew what they were doing. And you know, original Club Dante was very well sought after, and I got into that. And this was like around 12th grade. So 12th grade, by that time, television show, here it comes. Television show comes on television called Soul Train.
Okay.
And I start watching that, and I'm like, oh my God. That took me out. I mean,
do you remember what year that was when you first saw it on television?
It was in '71 when it came, when it first hit LA, because Philadelphia was one of the first cities that had it. It wasn't in every city at that time. It was in certain cities, and Philadelphia was lucky enough to have it. And I had just graduated high school, and I had went to New York, and I had worked at Silverfield, Danziger and Bangzer, as a law clerk, and I came back, and at that point I decided to go to LA, because that's where it was taken. And then everything sort of just nothing but going on Soul Train. I knew nobody in LA. I knew nothing about LA. All that I knew is that Soul Train was in LA, and I wanted to go on Soul Train. So, God, Lord have mercy. This is a long story.
So what happened when you got there?
Oh God. Well, right before I went, you know, my family was a little concerned. I think my father told me that, you know, I was going over his dead body, and I told him something like, "Well, you have to supply the gun because I'm leaving," or something like that.
Well, and, we know you didn't mean that, but that was just an example.
And the other thing was, you know how your parents have your graduation pictures on the mantle in the living room?
Yes.
I was taking everything. I took everything. I'd never been anywhere, but then my mother came up to me and she said, "No, you're doing a lot of things, but you're going to leave my pictures back up there."
Yes.
And of course, that's where I left them. I took a whole trunk. I had a whole trunk. Didn't have nowhere to go.
Did you have a job? Did you have an apartment?
I had nothing. I had absolutely nothing. I think I might have had maybe $60 or $70 left. I can tell you that I arrived in LA September the 22nd, 1972 at 10:22 p.m. Pacific time on a Tuesday. I know that because that was the time that when the plane hit the ground, I was like elated. So what I basically did is I basically went and I threw my stuff away, and I befriended some friends and wound up staying with them. And for people that have never been to LA, LA is not a place that you want to go to if you don't have a car. It's very, very difficult to get around, and especially in the early 70s. In the early 70s, LA was it was a magnificent, beautiful place. It was like going to paradise.
Yes.
But it was big. Oh, God, was it big. You'd have to walk a whole half a mile to go to McDonald's. And I went to, I think the club was the Summit. It was up there on La Brea, on the hill. And that's where, because I knew to go there because I saw a poster somewhere, I think it was on a pole or something, that said the Soul Train game was going to be there, blah, blah. So that's when I went and I walked up this steep hill off of La Brea Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And was it Slauson? I think it was Slauson and La Brea. There's a club called the Summit, and there's also a club called the Climax, because they were at two of those clubs. But I think that club was called the Climax. You might have talked to Don Campbell, and he might have mentioned either one of those clubs to you too. When I went in there, it was like, oh, you know, you have to kind of redefine how you dance.
Yes.
Because
what kind of music did you hear when you went to that club versus when you just leaving Philly? What kind of music, the music culture shock, what was you now listening to? Do you remember some of the songs? Was it James Brown? Was it?
No, it was Oh God, Roberta Flack. It was You Got Me Going in Circles.
In the club?
Oh, I wasn't in clubs.
What was that considered? Were you?
I was 16 and 17. I mean, but I did go to clubs when I was in New York.
Okay.
I did manage to go in there. Matter of fact, I was at the grand opening at Better Days. And Better Days had 2 openings, but I was at the first one. Matter of fact, I was the first person on the floor.
Do you remember
like
what
in
year
1970,
that was?
71.
Okay.
71 on 46th Street.
Okay.
So I went there, and then that's when what's the girl's name? Then Armed and Extremely Dangerous. It'll Come to Me. First Choice.
Yes.
That's when First Choice was popular.
Dr. Love.
Dr. Love. Yes. All of
okay.
This is when all of this was popular.
Okay.
This is when music was changing, because before then you would have, the crazy thing about music then and music now is that back in the 60s, most of the groups that you would listen to, they had uplifting and strong and powerful names. Like the Temptations, the Supremes, the Marvelettes.
Yes.
They would all have something to uplift. And as years go by, it kind of diminished.
Yes.
It kind of diminished. That's something that I clearly remember about those decades. But when I got to LA, it was like I was listening to a whole nother style of music.
Yes.
But I'm sure they were playing the same music back on the East Coast. The only difference is that back then you were very, in the 60s, it was very revolutionary. You were very smooth. You were very inverted. You weren't an extroverted person. You weren't kicking. You weren't jumping. You weren't diving. You weren't doing none of that. It was very smooth. You had to. Most of the clothes at the time would be band. Going a little bit before then. Most black people didn't wear the bell bottoms. I think they wore more sharkskin pants. More tailored things, like when you see the Temptations and you see them a little tight, they wore things like that, fitted clothes. Yes. It wasn't until I would guess the late the 72 or 73 that they start doing that, because I'm coming from a conservative place. Philadelphia was a very conservative place. Okay. You would have band lines, high boys, conferences, wingtips. These are the kind of clothes that you would wear. And I'm talking about conference shoes and wingtip shoes. You would be dressed down. Okay. And then when I got to LA, and I saw the funkiness came out, the short shirts, the stuff that showed your waist, the hip huggers, all of this other stuff. I'm like, it was like a culture shock.
Yes.
And then I was being very smooth. I mean, even though these people could also do the cha-cha, because I remember Fluky doing the cha-cha.
And this was the club, that place that you named when you went out on the Soul Train?
This is when I went to Soul Train. I could literally see them. When I went to the Summit, it was
That was your first.
That was my first
being around the dance culture.
That was my first encounter being around the Soul Train gang.
Okay.
Before that, I was around a group of older people. But when I got to the Summit, there's a gentleman by the name of Little Joe Chisholm. God bless you. I miss you too. Who passed away. He befriended me, and through Little Joe, I started to meet everybody.
Do you remember some of the people that you met?
Oh, I remember it vividly. Right. I remember Pat Davis. I remember Demita. I remember Don Campbell. They weren't even the lockers then. They were just doing the dance. Okay. That was before all of this, and. I I think I told somebody else this. I said, my first experience on Soul Train was, and that was actually my first experience being also in a gay club in L.A.
Okay.
When they took me into the Paradise Ballroom, was it? The Paradise Ballroom. That's because Little Joe took me all around everywhere. I mean, I have to give it to Little Joe. Little Joe was he was like my guardian angel. I mean, he really took me by the hand. He really worked. He did some wonderful things for me. Wonderful things for me. The other thing was that the show had only been in LA for one season. So I had gotten on the second season.
Okay, because you had to get familiar with the culture and how everything worked.
I wasn't there.
Okay.
I wasn't there in 71.
Okay.
Soul Train started in LA in 71. I got there in 72.
Okay.
I was in high school, and then right after high school I went to New York through 71. And then that's when I started to go back to Big Boy's Restaurant and Stanton and Broad and save up enough money to get a one-way ticket to go to LA. And that's what I did. So I got there in September of 72. I think I left off when I went to the club and Little Joe was taking me all around the city and introducing me to all of these people. When I got to this summit, that's where I met Pat Davis, Demita, Scooby-Doo, Fluky, Shab. I don't think Shab was there yet. All the rest of them. That's why I met all of them.
But they weren't the lockers yet. But
no, they weren't the lockers. They were all there though.
Okay.
They were all there. Then what happened was the taping came.
For Soul Train.
For Soul Train. Now, in order to go on Soul Train, you had to go to a recreation park where Pam Brown she had control, and the recreation park was called Dinkers Park, and that was around off of 33rd or 34th and Adams, if I'm not mistaken. And I missed going there. So, and when you went up to the television studio, there was a guard, and you'd have to come in there and give the guard your name, and then he would let you through. But since I wasn't there, my name wasn't on the list. So what Joe did was he put me in the trunk of the car, and he proceeded to drive on through, and then that's how I got in. It was amazing. Then when I got there, I was like, I'd never been in a studio before. I've never been into nothing like this before. First thing I said to myself when I went there, I said, my God, this thing looks smaller because it looks bigger on, on TV. And I saw the railroad tracks with the city names and the whole 9 yards. And we were there. I was there with Little Joe and Pat Davis. We were trying to pair ourselves with dancers, and I didn't have a dancer because I was there by myself. So Pat Davis said, "Oh, you can dance with my cousin." And I'm like, "Well, who is your cousin?" She said, "Her name is Sharon." So I said, "Oh, okay, where's she at?" And she pointed to this girl. This girl was the darkest, the prettiest thing I had ever seen in my life, ever. I mean, she was like, and she had these two little bum things on the thing, and she was just as afraid as I was. I think this was her first, the second time being on there too. So Sharon and I started dancing together. And I think at the very same time, Little Joe said that I'm not going to be able to be here next month or something. He said because we were on, Demita and Joe had just won the American Bandstand Dance Contest a month before, and they had a trip to go to Hawaii.
Okay.
So they took the trip to go to Hawaii, and they started doing that. So from that day, I guess because I had a certain, or Sharon and I had a certain look, we were a little concerned because we thought that Pam Brown or Don Cornellius would say something, well, why are you here? What are you here to? but they didn't do anything. You know, as a matter of fact, they both embraced us.
What do you mean you had a certain look? What do you mean by that?
I was young, handsome. When I was young, I was handsome. Now I'm kind of, but I was handsome. I could move. I couldn't dance the way they danced.
Oh, you had a dance look, you mean, and a physical appearance too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Sharon and I we had the same basic thing, and then we got up there and we shook our little groove thing, and I thought at that point, they didn't mind. But at that time, I wasn't really fully aware of the fact that they just wanted bodies, because I don't think anybody was aware the significance of the dancers that was there. I just think that what Don wanted to do initially, I think Don's initial thing was that he really wanted to give a venue for black artists that didn't have one, because there were so many shows like Ed Sullivan, American Bandstand. There were so many shows that so many other artists, especially the ones from the South, like Dorothy Moore, Sylvia, even the ones from Intruders, they wouldn't be able to be on those shows. So I'm assuming that's why he created Soul Train.
That's what his first approach was.
To do that. He had absolutely no idea that these dancers were going to do what they did.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I don't know if you've watched the documentary, but I'll give you one too. The documentary states that he had no idea that they were throwing up legs and kicking and jumping, and all. He said if it was up to him, he wouldn't have had that, because again, Chicago, Philadelphia, that's all on the East Coast. They were very, very conservative, very smooth when they moved.
Yes.
This is like, that's why I'm glad and I'm excited, because I've come into a whole nother generation of music.
Yes.
And the music started to change. And because the music started to change, the dancing started to change. It was like a whole nother generation wanted to be defined about who they were, not by the previous generation.
Yes.
So we danced on the show, Sharon and I, for a while. Now, I think we danced on the show maybe two months or 3 months, and then that's when Don Cornellius had announced to everybody that he was going to that he was going to do a Soul Train tour. Now,
Excuse me, was any dancers featured as a group before he made this announcement? Any dance groups premiering on there, or just individual dancers?
Well, he's always, I think they had the dance contest, and he would always showcase dancers in the beginning, because Sharon and I did something called the PA Slaughter. So he would periodically showcase dancers.
Okay.
On there. But this is like in 74, 73. And he also had the insight before we even went on tour to have us put in right on and I think the reason why he did that was because he wanted to hype up the tour.
Okay, and so, is that what this is?
Yeah, this is what this is. So the people that you see here are the people that went on the tour. And what we were doing, we weren't the Soul Train dancers. What we were actually, we were representing them.
Were you guys the first Soul Train dance group representatives? This is the first time that Don had did this?
First time.
Okay.
Never done this before. Now, I think at this time, if I'm not mistaken, I think the lockers were already established at this point. So what happened was, Scooby was here, but in the interim, they also used Don Campbell and Demita as alternates, because these people here were hand selected by Don himself.
Okay.
He selected them. He said, "I want you. I want you. I want you. I want you."
From what he was seeing on the dance floor.
From what he saw, he hand selected each and every one of us.
Okay.
Matter of fact, my name is Tyrone the Bone Proctor, and he also gave me that name.
So he didn't know. Did he know you personally? Any of you guys personally, or he just knew you guys as dancers and said?
He knew us. He knew us as dancers. He knew us as great dancers. He knew us that when that camera came on, when that green light came on, that we were moving.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that was the reason why he had made his choice the way he did, because it was his thing. And I'll never forget the first place that we performed. We performed at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, which was 80,000 seats. And I clearly remember telling Don, I said, well, these people don't know who I am. You know, if I go out on that stage, what are they going to do? And he says, it's all right, Bone. Go on. And I think Sharon and I had the thing out. And I think Gary Keys and Pat Davis were they were the last, because the way they did this is how we did this.
Was it a dance event or an entertainment event?
Let me explain how this is. Now since I'm thinking about it, I think I need to explain it to everybody. What Don did, Don had a Soul Train. He did a Soul Train tour.
Okay.
The Soul Train dancers that he used opened up the tour, opened up the show. Sharon and I were the first people that people saw when they started doing that, and then the other couples came out, the other couples came out, the other couple came out, and then we danced a little bit, then we were off. Then at that point, then you had either the Silvers, the Whispers, the Eddie Kendricks, and other people on the show. So it was Don Cornellius and the Soul Train Gang presents Eddie Kendricks, the Silvers, the Whispers, and blah 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 blah. It was like that, and that went on for about maybe nine months, if I can remember. And I might be wrong about that. 9 months. There's pictures here, and what Don did is that I really believe that the man's underrated, because for what he did, for the way he thought, he was genius. Who would have ever thought to make sure that we're put in magazines so that it would be another way for people to actually identify with us? Because I'd never been in show business. I didn't know what I was doing. You know, he told us to do it, and we did it. And we did it. You know, we had no idea about this. We had no idea about fan mail. You know, and this would go on for years. All of this is all of us here. It's me there, being the Bone. This is all of us here.
Wow.
This is me here. This
So
is me in a
years taking the dancers on a tour with the entertainment. The Soul Train dancers opened up the show for the singers and the entertainers.
Mm-hmm. And it was I can tell you the partners. It was myself, Sharon Hill, Gary Keys, Pat Davis, Jimmy Scooby-Doo would dance with Demita, and then when Scooby-Doo wasn't there, Don Campbell would dance with Demita.
Wow.
And then also, if Demita wasn't there, then they had Lynn Perkins and Freddie Maxey. They would be there as well. And that's all of us there.
Okay.
The only one that didn't actually go on tour was James Phillips. He's right there. But everybody else was on tour. And this carried on and on and on. See, here we are all here. And what we did, I always look at it as not as being the Soul Train gang, but what we were doing, we were representing everybody.
Okay.
Because the Soul Train, you know, Soul Train was a little bit more than just dancers. You had people on there that really had a specific kind of look. You had
Fashion, yes.
You had people that could, no, I'm saying look, I mean look a certain way.
Okay.
Very pretty or very handsome.
Yeah.
Then you had people that were very fashion, which would be the Pasadena bunch.
Okay.
They would all come from Pasadena. That's Alan Crowder in that crew. That's another person that you should get to know, because he can give you a whole nother insight on the show as well.
Okay.
You know, just to give you a little side note. Matter of fact, he told me this. You know, the bump. You know the bump?
Yes.
The bump came from a gay club.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, that's what Alan told me. Alan
Wow.
told me. Yeah, and I didn't know that either, but that's what he said.
Wow, because people were doing that all throughout the 70s. That was a popular dance that everybody was doing all over the country.
Well, you have to also remember that even before these people went on Soul Train, they were in clubs.
Yes.
So it was the things that they were doing in the clubs, they brought and took to Soul Train.
Okay, and then the rest of the country
Then
took
the rest
that
of the
as a standard and started to imitate it.
Exactly,
Okay.
because Don Campbell and was locking. You know, he didn't create that from dancing on the show. That was done, if I'm not mistaken, before then. You have to check with him, but
Yes.
I'm pretty sure he was doing that before he even got on the show.
Yes.
And other people had started to mimic what he was doing,
And that's why we were seeing locking on the show, because they were imitating him.
Yeah, well, Don was Don is the original. Yeah.
Okay.
You can't get any better than Don. And these are all it's these many articles that he put us all in. This is crazy.
And at the time, Right On magazine
Here's
was the
another one that
magazine
was
documenting everything.
Very pretty, yeah, very pretty girl, Vicky Abercrombie. That's another one.
Wow.
That was like, you know, she could move very well and she was very fashionable. She was the one that I think brought it up. There was a point on Soul Train where they wore the 40s dress, where the girls were dressing in like 1940s clothes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think she had a lot to do with that too. And of course, Pat Davis and Lisa and them had, you know, they did the thing about the butterfly and all that other stuff. There's a lot of things on there. This is the Meet Us. This is where we met. This is All of Us in the Park. This is All of Us in the Park.
Wow.
This is All of Us in the Park on the set. Here's one of this is Penguin.
Rerun.
You may know him as
Yes,
Rerun.
Rerun. Okay.
You know, this is All of Us here. This is myself. This is James Phillips, and you may know him as on All My Children.
Look at that.
Darnell. This is
Darnell.
This is Darnell Williams right here. Yes. That's Darnell Williams right there. Darnell.
He was a dancer.
Yes, he danced on Soul Train.
Okay.
Yeah, of course he did. There's a better picture of him, I think, here. Where's it at? I thought I had it. There's a better picture of him somewhere around here. Is this it? Nope. I think it's on the white pages. There's a better picture of him. I have a better picture of him.
So this looks like you got the Bible of Soul Train and so
Well,
on.
this here was a picture taken, I don't know where we were, but we were somewhere, and this was backstage.
Wow.
We had just got through performing, and this is All of Us. I think this is, I need to put my glasses on. You know, I'm an oldie, but a goodie. This is Gary Keys. This is Mr. X. Don Campbell, myself, Sharon Hill, Freddie, Pat Davis, Lynn Perkins, and Scooby-Doo.
Wow.
This is, we were taking, it says here, the Out of Sight Soul Train dancers have been appearing on stage shows across the country with some big name stars. The fans' fantastic dance never fails to blow everybody's mind with those super dance routines.
Wow.
Yeah, this is it. Now, also, what Don would do, Don would give us, well, like everybody said, you know, we never got paid for the show. All that we got was 2 pieces of chicken and a can of soda. This is what they gave us.
Oh wow.
We would take the show once a month, 2 shows on Saturday and 2 on Sunday. But every year, Don would give a Christmas party.
Okay.
And this was a party here that he gave us. This is Flo Jenkins, the editor of Right On magazine at the time.
Oh wow.
This is Richard Pryor with Pat Davis. This is Melvin with Gary Keys. This is Dinah Ross right here. This is myself right here. This is David Vincent. These are some more Soul Train dancers here. So
Wow.
he would do that every year. Don was a very very generous person, very soft spoken, but really kind of standoffish kind of guy, but a good person, very good person. Just to move on a little bit, I think in 75 or 74, it was Dick Clark who asked Demeter and Little Joe if they knew any dancers that they could recommend for dancing in the his next American Bandstand Dance Contest. And Little Joe and Demeter recommended Sharon and I. That's how we got on American Bandstand. And we went up to his office. We met he had just married Carrie, his wife, and we had to do a small little routine. I think what I did was I took Sharon and turned her around, and she fell over, and he said, "Good, then we'll use you." And we were number 3, and it was a very nice experience because you got to meet other dancers as well.
Yeah. Were you doing the hustle, which is what I was seeing?
No, not at that time. Sharon and I had started to dance kind of like together, and we started to use a lot of arms and stuff like that, where we would start doing together, and then other people would start to follow that kind of movement. God, I wish Sharon was here. God, oh Lord, I wish my baby was here. But she's home in LA.
Wow.
That's all right. We did that, and the way you voted is, back then in the 70s, you had to send an index card in. You had to mail an index card in.
Into the show?
You had to mail it, yes, into American Bandstand, because there wasn't no other way to do that. So you had to write on there, "I want couple number 3 to win, blah, 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 blah." And Sharon and I, we were so apprehensive about all of this that we would go to, this happened about a couple of weeks, so we would go and we would try out our routines. The way we would try out our routines is that we would go around different nightclubs, and we would tell, like, we went to the Total Experience one night, and we asked the manager if we could perform for 15 minutes, and then we would hand out the cards, and then they would sign the cards, and then we'd gather all the cards up, put the stamp on them, and then mail them ourselves. But come to find out that we didn't really even need to do that, because I think out of 7 contestants, there were 100,000 votes tabulated. Out of 7 contestants, each one. And Sharon and I got 60,000 of the votes.
And this was televised on TV.
Yeah, I'm going to show you the video after.
And you got 60,000 votes from random people all over the country.
Yes.
That voted for you guys.
Yes.
And what year was this in?
75, 74.
Now this is important because I always bring this up as a reminder to the younger generation, because they don't realize the sacrifices that people had to go through for them to do what they're doing. The civil rights movement was going on in the 60s and so on, and I know you're familiar with that. Martin Luther King and all of these different things was going on as far as racism, and I want you to speak to that too. But at the time when all of those things were going on here, going into the 70s, of course there was some lingering effects of racism and prejudices and so on, but yet you guys were able to get 60,000 votes on a show that was being televised that at that time, am I right, was predominantly white?
What I think happened, this is what I think happened. You're true, but what I think happened is I think that the people from Soul Train realized that we were on there, so they went on they looked on Bandstand, and they sent in their things because they knew that we were on there. A lot of people did that. People still come up to me to this day and say, I remember you and Sharon, and I mean to this day, and this is 2012.
That they saw it.
that they saw it and they remember.
And they had a lot of pride and respect for what you did to move them enough to go and make their vote count.
It was one of the best moments of my life.
Wow.
Now, with that being said, when the cars, we both won cars. We won Mazda RX-4 Coupe, 74 Mazda RX Coupe, brand new, right off the lot. She won one and I won one.
Wow. From a dance competition.
From a dance competition.
No one can win anything like that nowadays. So
that's what we won.
That was probably historic in itself, just winning
That's
that.
what we won, yeah. And they were both green. The problem that I was having, I had to go to my little friend Jeffrey Daniels. That's like my little brother. He's in Shalimar. And I went to him and I said, you know, this $325 and something odd cent, I think 64 cents, that we had to pay the tax on in order to get the car out.
Oh, okay.
Which was not said. So when the car came, they said that you can pick up your car, you just have to pay the tax and then you can get the keys and take it. And I didn't also know that it was a stick, because I couldn't drive a stick, but it didn't, and Sharon Hill couldn't drive at all, but it didn't take either one of us long enough to learn, trust me.
How old were you?
Oh my God.
If you could think.
I must have been at least 74, maybe 23, maybe 20,
Wow.
somewhere
And you
around
won
there.
a car at 23, and that's not something that a 23-year-old can go out there and just buy a brand new car like that.
No, it was a souped up little Mazda.
Did you call your mother and tell her, guess what, Mom?
Didn't have to tell her, she already knew.
Because she was watching it too?
They were all watching it. Everybody was
Wow.
watching it. You know, those people from Philadelphia, I'm sure they were, and the people, and Sharon Hill's from Texas, so I'm sure the people from Texas were sending in cards too. So they were doing all of this. So
That's exciting.
as we were doing, you know, so Jeffrey said, well, you don't have any money and I don't have any money, so let's go and ask Don. And I'm like, are you out your mind? He says, yeah, let's go ask him. So we went up to Don's office with our head between our tails, you know, tail between our heads, you know, whatever. And
this is Don Cornellius.
This is Don Cornellius. And you know, he says, all right, what's up, Bone? And I clearly remember Jeffrey edging me on. You want it? You go tell him. So you tell him. So I went up there and I told him. I said, well, you know, Don, the cars came back from the car, you know, from American Bandstand. Now, mind you, Don Cornellius and Dick Clark didn't really get along too well. Because
Competition.
before Don, and this is in the documentary as well. Dick Clark did a little underhanded thing by putting when they found out that Soul Train was so popular, he put a show out called Soul Unlimited, which took all of Don's dances and they put on that show. I never went on the show. But all the people that was there started to go on that show. So what they did was, it's all in the documentary. Don Cornellius got with Jesse Jackson, and to make a long story short, Dick Clark had to cancel that show because the black artists weren't having it. The black people weren't having it at that time.
Okay.
So you know, I'm going up there a little hesitant, and I'm saying, well, you know, I got
knowing
the car.
all of that.
Yeah, I got the car. No, I didn't know any of this.
Okay.
I didn't know any of this till later. I didn't know that I knew the show came on and I knew it went off. I didn't know why.
Okay.
Until years later. And then I'm sitting there, I'm going, well, darn, Don, how can I
borrow $300 and something dollars?
$334, $25.64. So I asked him, and he pulled away from his desk, took out his checkbook, wrote it, check out to me, and gave it to me.
No, well, I'm giving you this, no stipulations, but just wrote the check and said, here you go.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's what he did.
What was your reaction?
I just wanted to get the car.
You had to react though.
I'm just being honest.
You had to react. You had to say thank you. I appreciate this. What was your reaction, Tyrone, when he wrote the check and gave it to you without no stipulations? Tell the world what your reaction was that day in his office. To the best of your memory.
I was happy. I just remember going to his bank, which was downstairs, and cashing it and going straight to the Mazda dealer. I don't even know if Jeffrey was with me because I think
You almost, so you blacked out basically. After you got the check, you don't even have any memory of what your reaction was. You just blacked out because all you knew at that point you had to head downstairs.
I know that Jeffrey was with me when we went to get the money. And well, when we went to ask for it. But people don't realize that's the kind of man that Don Cornellius was. You know, Don Cornellius was a very giving person. He was a very genuine person. I mean, I miss him to this day. I got the car, and God.
You didn't know how to drive it.
No,